Hey everybody, hope you all are doing well. See, we got 11 people have joined so far, so thank you all for joining me today. I'm excited to answer everybody's questions. Just a little preamble before we get started. It'd be great to have you guys introduce yourselves right here in the chat. So if you just want to say hi, that way I get a sense of who's here, and yeah, excited to really get things started. While you guys are doing that. Yeah, I guess a little bit about myself to just kind of set the ground here. My name's Adam Perlis. I am the CEO and founder of Academy, which is a UX staffing and recruiting agency. We work with clients that range from Google DeepMind all the way to startups like Superhuman, Under Armour. You name it. We've kind of worked with a full gamut of different types of clientele over the years, helping place folks in roles for both contract and for full-time roles, on various usually design teams. Our focus usually is for product designers, and now of course AI product designers and design engineers. And we also, of course, do other roles like product managers are now product engineers, interaction designers, design operations professionals, UX researchers, etc. So we really focus on the front of the house. We work directly with hiring managers who really entrust us as experts in design recruiting to help them find amazing talent. And today's session is really to help illuminate some of the things that those types of folks are looking for when it comes to hiring an AI product designer or design engineer, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have already started to become, or maybe were before, or are at the earliest phases of learning how to make that transition. As a vibe coder myself and the founder of B150, which is what you see in the bottom right corner, which is actually literally a social network, a professional social network that I've vibe coded myself, start to finish. That is kind of like LinkedIn, but for AI professionals. I live and breathe this stuff every day. I have Cursor terminal up, and I've got anti-gravity up, and I've got Claude Code up all at the same time, all running multiple projects, all doing 5 different tasks at a different time, or at the same time rather. And so while I'm certainly deep in the work, I'm also very much a part of the hiring process at a lot of companies, and very excited to share a lot of my knowledge with you guys and help answer questions for you of how to make this transition, how to stand out, and yeah. So I'm excited to get started. I believe on your side you should see a way to call in. There should be a button maybe at the bottom of your UI to be able to ask questions. You can do that there. If that fails, we can do that right here in the chat. I haven't seen everybody introduce themselves. Andy, I see you. Thank you. I'm going to show you in stream for that. And would love to see and hear from some other folks who you are, where you're from, like what you do, very briefly. And like it'll be good to kind of understand the audience. And then if you do have a question, please either plug it in there or ask away right here through the call-in feature. I'll hang tight, wait for you guys to type, and then we can get started. And don't be shy, guys. Hey, Seth. Good to see you here, man. Oh, great. Welcome, Kaylee. Awesome. We got some junior designers, folks in NYC. Kalpitha, David. Good. I'm seeing some familiar names here. Tassiful. Awesome. Thank you. Andy as well. Okay. All right. So I think, did you guys figure out the how to do a call-in? It would be really great because then I can see you on screen and we can really have a dialogue. If you're having trouble with that, let me know. I think there should be a way to do it though. Otherwise, Andy, I will answer your question, but let me know what you think. Oh, good. All right. Good. Can't see everybody's last name, so, but I'm guessing some of you from what I know. So thank you, Becca. Thank you, Emily. All right, Andy's calling in. Thank you. There we go. Hey, Andy, how you doing? Good to see you.
Here we go. Doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm going to change this layout so we can see us both. All right, there we go.
There we go.
Um, Great to see you. Hey, we're matching hats too, by the way. That's awesome.
Yeah, there you
Um,
go. What's DAC?
DAC is
Or
actually an
DAK?
amazing coffee brand from Amsterdam that we've found here in Spain that we just like love and we just buy it all the time. So I
Nice.
just went there last week and I was like, let's go to the showroom and they had these awesome hats.
That's awesome. Very cool. Well, this is
Yeah, so
obviously repping Figma. Got Figma hat on.
yes, yes, indeed. And hopefully I'll see you at Config again this year.
Yeah, yeah, I'll be there.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I'm excited to answer your question. Yeah, please shoot. I'm sure everybody will also get a lot of benefit from this.
Yeah, as I stated in my comment in the thread, always get kind of like deer. I said spotlight, deer in the headlight. Kind of like syndrome at this moment. Like where to begin? Currently at a company called Feather. It's a marketing platform specifically geared towards nonprofits. We just hired a second designer, but I've been the only designer for the past few years.
Mhm.
Emily is here in the chat. She is our second designer that
Great.
just started with us a few weeks ago. And there's been this like friction between me as the only designer and then our team of I think 12 engineers front end and back end who are all very much actively using Claude. Um, and and I've also, sped up my own personal workflow on personal side projects, but also with things that I am capable of doing at work.
Mm.
But getting those PRs kind of approved, you don't know what you don't know, and you're like relying on Claude to kind of like fill in the gaps. And then you get it reviewed. Our process is you have to get two reviewers, and depending on who you get those reviews from, sometimes they go like very deep and in the weeds on like very technical things, and then other times it's just like super simple surface level
Mm.
things. And so oftentimes I'll like take that, GitHub issue with all the feedback and kind of like run it back through Claude Code and be like, hey, this person had a bunch of feedback. How to, what do we need to do? But
Mm.
then sometimes those tickets just kind of like live in this graveyard and just like never get like, approved and shifting priorities and all that.
Mhm.
I know I just kind of like ranted and there wasn't like necessarily like a specific question in that, but I guess to recap, like other than the obvious, focus on developing the relationships with the people that you're working with more closely to get those things prioritized. I'm not like
Yeah.
even going through the proper channels of like code review, like a code official code review channel of like posting a ticket.
Mm.
How would you encourage people like me in my situation to kind of like carve out and make space to get the things that I'm working on prioritized and approved and merged into production?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're definitely on the farthest end, I think, of the spectrum when it comes to this type of work, right? Like there are those maybe who are like very beginner, and then those are like way far along, and like your company is clearly has already embraced, vibe coding and vibe designing by, I guess lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like a new paradigm, right? It's like now in some ways like you're doing so much work to help push the ball forward,
Hmm.
and then your bottleneck ends up becoming a code review.
Yep. Yep.
And so
Exactly.
then the question is like, well, how do you manage that within your company? And it sounds like right now there isn't a good way for your development team to either have the bandwidth or have the care to take take those as like serious
Yeah.
and actually approve them, because right now you're probably being limited in the way that you're allowed to interface with the GitHub, right? So you're maybe allowed to like create PRs, you aren't allowed to push to production, right?
Right. Yep.
Um, and so, I mean, that feels like more of a management and leadership conversation that you need to have and say, like, hey, like, look, like I've shipped all of these things. Like, here's a list of them. And I've even
Hmm.
prioritized them based on like what I've heard from you guys and, and what I think should be prioritized. We need to figure out a better way of working together because right now there's a lot of these things are just sitting in the queue and they're honestly like some of them are super easy and like low level and like such easy wins that like feels like my team could actually just go and actually like push this to prod, right? And
Right.
everything would be okay. But you need maybe a developer to come in and help you prioritize it and say, yeah, what you have here, this is fine. You can push that. Like, but like what you have here, this is like critical infrastructure stuff. I'm concerned. Like, let's make sure that this is sandboxed, and our team will really dive into it, and we'll make time to dive into it
Yeah.
via a process that you guys help implement, and that should needs to come, I think, at the leadership level. So I would
Yeah.
probably engage them through that manner.
Yeah. That's that's helpful. It's good. Definitely are like continuously having these conversations not only with the developers, but I mean you hit the nail right on the head with like the not having enough bandwidth, not only from my perspective, but also the develop like ICs just in general across the board just don't
Yeah.
have enough bandwidth. And maybe maybe we do have the bandwidth, but it's not approved bandwidth, right? And so
Yeah. Well, that also is
everything's kind of
another
like,
hiring question, right? Like maybe there's a person that they hire very specifically to work with you guys as this conduit that can review those things, can prioritize things, and then they're
yeah,
not the ones that are there every day, maybe coding, right? Their job is to do code review, you know?
yeah, yeah. We are actively hiring some more engineers, and so
Okay.
maybe there's a light at the end of the
Maybe
tunnel.
someone here, probably not in this chat, but
Sure.
yes,
Yeah.
for sure. A good, B150 would be a good place to post that for sure.
Hmm.
And yeah, this is great though. It's good to see this wide spectrum of question because I think a lot of the people in this room probably are more on the junior side, but
Sure.
they can see where like what the most senior kind of side of this or like most experienced side of that is. And
Yeah.
so your question is super valid and relevant. So thanks for sharing that,
Cool.
Andy. Any other
Awesome.
questions I can answer for you while you're here?
No, I think that's the big one right now. And I guess to kind of like bookend it with something that I said in my initial rant, if you will, is that like developing relationships with the people that you're working on is like one of the biggest, most crucial, critical parts of the whole workflow process.
Yeah.
If you don't have any sort of like one-on-one relationship with any of these people, like why are they going to respond to you just sliding into their DMs and being like, hey, can you review this for me, because that you know you have no credibility. So
Yeah, I think as you know, every organization is probably at a different maturity level when it comes to this. And also like, I think the larger the organization, the more resistant they're likely going to be to, vibe coding and all of this new way of working. But I think like it is probably a smaller organization, which I assume Feather's a little bit smaller compared to,
yeah.
you know, uh, I don't know, a much larger group. At your level, you're deeply enmeshed in this process. And yeah, like you said, like building those relationships with those developers who are going to need to be involved in the process is like critically important. So treat them well, they'll treat you well.
Hmm.
You guys are going to build strong relationship together. You're not there to take their job. You're there to take like the low-hanging fruit off their plate and to work collaboratively to build amazing systems that work for everybody.
Yeah.
You can focus on the details, that they don't want to focus on. So yeah, I think those are really great points, and I hope hopefully other folks learned a little bit from this. Thank you, Andy. I
Cool.
appreciate you asking the question.
Yeah, of course. How
Awesome.
do I step off of the
I think
stage?
there's a way to press like stop, or you maybe click the call in again. But yeah, I
All right,
don't know if there's a
we'll
way to
figure it
boot
out.
you. Cool. Well, while Andy is doing that, if anyone else has a question and wants to call in, you can do so now. And I will look, Andy, to see if there's another way to to turn you off. Let's see. Is there a way to kick you from here? Uh, oh, okay. I think there's a way. I'm going to remove Andy. Okay, cool. I think Andy's out. Thank you, Andy. Great. Any other folks have a question? I believe at the bottom of the UI, just a reminder, there's a way to call in. If you go ahead and select that, maybe Andy, if you have a instructions on how you did it, you can plug that into the chat. Don't be shy, guys. This is literally the time to ask questions and to be vulnerable, and for me to help you, and everything I answer here will help others as well. So you're all here to learn, and I'm sure you have lots of things you're contending with in this new environment. Okay, it's a button to. Okay, Andy says you can't post a screenshot, but it's a button right to the left of this input. Okay, so this input meaning where you type the message, Andy? Okay, got it. So wherever people are in the chat, make sure that there's a button there you can click that you can call in. Okay, I'm going to start calling you all out by name if you don't respond. Okay, good. I got David calling in. Thank you, David.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, David, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks so much for joining and asking a question. I appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to participate. Um, I actually, in anticipation, I made like a list of questions and just like numbered them based on like
Great.
importance. Um,
Happy to
I have
answer
a
them
number
all.
one that I'll ask now.
Yeah, sure.
Um, so I am like in the early stages of a new job search. I was laid off my product design role, and I
Sorry to
am.
hear that.
It's all right. Thank you, though. But
Yeah.
feeling optimistic. Um,
Good. Me too.
So I'm currently in this stage where I'm working on improving my portfolio
Mm,
projects because I wasn't very satisfied with what shipped on the job. Um,
mm,
our design system never really got into shape. It was always very out of sync with like what we were doing like in Figma at the time. And even
mm.
what we were doing in Figma at the time was kind of a mess because of like it not being maintained over the years. So visually things were weak, UX wise things felt like a little bit weak, and I am improving my projects both like visually but also making like a couple of like UX changes. And what I'm more specifically doing is I'm actually like redoing these projects as like prototypes using Claude Code and using Cursor. Um, and very happy with the progress, but I'm concerned about how different they look from where things left off at the company. It's like I
Yeah.
have these before state screenshots that were the state of like before I even began doing the work at the job, like how things looked. And then I have screenshots of like what shipped. But now I
Mm-hmm.
have images of like how I'm doing my edit to them, making them look so much better. And I kind of need like a mindset or a strategy of like how to approach presenting that. Because I feel like if I show like that initial before state compared to like this after state, it's like not only did like the layout change and the UX change, but it's like, whoa, like the colors are pretty different. The typography is pretty different. I need to like find a way to make that make sense.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I think so many folks suffer from this, broadly speaking, without AI, right? And I do actually generally advise folks, to think about doing a project like this where if they're not unhappy with what the end result was because maybe some limiting factors were presented, right? Um, you had no control over the final output because stakeholders were the ones making the decisions. You never got a chance to user test anything because that wasn't a priority financially for the organization. Um, like it doesn't, the work, the end product doesn't always reflect your ability as a designer to both think through problems, make decisions critically about design. And while certainly your job as a designer is to balance, the business needs, the user needs, the design kind of best practice needs. Um, I think when it comes to showing portfolio work, um, you know, I think there's a way to like strike this balance between like, hey, like uh, these are decisions the business made. I'm going to show you some of the work like that was done there, but I also want to show you some of the things that I would have done, differently had some circumstances been a little bit different. And I think that could be a nice positioning and a way of framing it where it doesn't feel like I'm not a team player. uh, and it feels like, but like I do have ideas and I do fight for them, and I wanted to kind of show you guys how I would approach a certain problem, you know, um, in a different through a different lens, and I think that paired with explaining and demonstrating that like, hey, like there's also this new way of working that by way of like not having uh, access to this technology until really the past year and a half, 2 years, right? I didn't have a chance to actually leverage it in my jobs. But I want to show you that I'm extremely capable and of doing it. And like here is like tangible examples of exactly how I did it. So I think if you were to like kind of frame it that way, any hiring managers they're going to understand right now. If you told me, let's say like a year from now, that you didn't have any vibe coding projects in there, then I'd be like, okay, like I'm getting a little concerned, like have you just not been working for a year, or like, why didn't you just like take on some projects of your own, some side projects, which is a whole other conversation, but that would be how I would frame it and approach it. And I think what you're doing is smart.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's encouraging. It sounds like it's the right path to go down, but just be intentional and strategic about the framing.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, we don't want to frame it as like you're not a team player. You're very much a team player, but you needed to demonstrate this other way of working that wasn't being shown, in the work, the final product. And so I think you can kind of like set that up from the beginning, do part of the presentation, and hey, like here's where things started, and like unfortunately, like we didn't get to launch the final product here, but like here's the direction I would have gone had things been a little bit different, and so on and so forth.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
As I mentioned, I do have further questions, other questions.
Yeah.
Should I ask them now, or is anybody else like queued up to call in?
Let's take a look. But if not, I'd be happy to answer more. Just because people were very shy before. I can't post. Okay, Emily, the one that says request live call-in. Okay, so Olga said, yeah, that's the one. Great. So why don't you ask one more? Oh, and then Mayank is also calling in now. Mayank will get to you. Ask one more, David, and then I'll get to Mayank.
Yeah. Okay. This one, it's funny. It kind of relates to the title of the event. And something I've been thinking about
Sure.
is, I think if we go back like 3 to 4 years ago, there was the title design engineer, but it was in the pre-vibe coding era. It meant something different. It was like, wow, you are a designer who knows how to code, and the things you code are fun and playful and look amazing, and
Yeah.
the level of effort and time to like get to that skill was like pretty immense.
Yeah.
Now, vibe coding can get you pretty much, I think, where a lot of those people were 3 or 4 years ago. So, what is like the new definition of being a design engineer?
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question. I think a lot of people have the same question as Andy noted here, his own imposter syndrome. Am I a design engineer? Look, it's a pretty wide spectrum, and every company defines it differently and also calls it something different. Are you an AI product designer? Are you a design engineer? Are you a vibe coder? Are you a product engineer? Are you a product design engineer? It's like there are just so many different flavors of all this stuff. And the real answer is that it depends, and like I said, it depends on the company and what their expectations are of that person. As a recruiter, it's our job to kind of help make that assessment right from the early stages of our conversations or reviewing your portfolio. We can talk about like what we kind of look for in a second, um, but for sure, like I don't think there should be a hesitancy of maybe defining yourself in one of these ways. Um, I think you should be realistic with whoever the hiring manager is or recruiter is of like where you are at on the spectrum. And to me, the spectrum looks like this. I kind of define it as I'm just experimenting. I'm learning how to like maybe go from a Figma prototype into you know, uh, like maybe Figma Make or like maybe experimenting with Lovable, like really lower touch tools that are just like, you know, you've tried some stuff out versus no, like I truly understand how like applications and websites are built. I understand the structure. I understand how broadly speaking in HTML connects to a CSS, connects to a JavaScript, connects to a server, connects to a database, connects through the authentication, right, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, I'm not an expert, but I broadly understand those as concepts, and I'm pretty comfortable being inside of like Cursor or Claude Code or Anti-Gravity or any type of IDE. Um, and while I'm certainly not going to be like diving into every single line of code and being like, oh yeah, like I know exactly what's happening here, I can look at it, kind of understand the gist, and be like, okay, yeah, I kind of get it, right? I think that's somewhere in the middle. Um, and then I think there's like the extreme ends where it's like you're in all those tools, you do all the things we just talked about, but you have a pretty deep understanding of it all. And like you could even like find a line of code and be like, yeah, that's not right here. Or you can question the logic of, let's say Claude in this case, or like any LLM that's coding for you and be like, oh man, they're going down the wrong path here, right? It's like they're wrong, like absolutely wrong. Like we need to test that. Like you interject and you stop it, right? So I think like those folks, they don't need to be a developer expert also. Like they don't know how to code, necessarily have to know how to code things themselves. I would probably consider myself in that camp where I do know how to code some things, right? Like I know how to do React. I know some basic JavaScript stuff. I know lots of libraries and how to kind of interface with them and how to interface with APIs, and like I understand all the connections of everything. But if you ask me to write it myself, like back end code or something like that, like I'd have no clue what I'm doing, right? And that's where like Claude and all these other tools are so powerful. Um, so like if you were to graduate beyond that, I'd say you're actually a developer, right? You're like a really full blown, full stack developer who understands this stuff and knows how to actually code it too. So if you're thinking about the spectrum, that's where I kind of define it. And I think most people need to become in that middle level. If you are at the middle level, that will be completely sufficient for you to be able to find a job. Um, if you are at the very beginning of that level, that will start to become irrelevant soon. And if you are not doing any of this stuff, you're completely irrelevant. So like start now.
Which is it, the middle part or that end part that a product designer would be able to call themselves a design engineer at?
Yeah, I think it would be fair to say that at the middle part would be a good starting point. And like I said, you don't need to be an expert, right? You don't need to know how to write HTML or CSS, right? Which honestly is like pretty basic stuff, but which you could probably learn in a weekend. Um, but what you do need to know is how all those things connect together, right? And I actually I'm trying to do, just have not had time to do it. I'm trying to do a course, like a day-long course that like teaches people some of the basics, core concepts in development that takes you from like development to actually building a full-on product in one day. And so stay tuned for more of that. But this is, I think you could probably acquire a lot of this information by cobbling it together through like YouTube videos. But yeah, obviously it's hard to know like what's good and what's not.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. I
Yeah.
might make a return after other callers have their chance. But thank
Yeah, if other people don't have more questions, please just jump right in. I'm gonna go over to Mayank now,
Cool.
and if you can't figure out, yeah, it looks like you figured it out. Great. Mayank, I'll have you join now. Thank you.
Hi,
Thanks for
Adam.
waiting. Hey,
No
how are
worries.
you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good, man. Thanks so much for calling in, and
Yeah,
how can I help
thanks for
answer a question for
hosting.
you?
Yeah, thanks for hosting these. And I think like a whole part of my question was already answered in the second question. Uh,
Good.
so yeah, I just wanted to understand it more deeply.
Sure.
How does that transition from being an AI-enabled designer or a vibe coder and designer
Mm.
engineer look like? And as you answered, like it's not just about the output anymore, but having a deeper understanding of what goes behind it. And one of the things that I'm personally focusing on is just uh, familiarizing myself with like React, TypeScript, knowing when hooks are used, when is a use state, use ref, all of these libraries that are used for frame of motion and GSAP, as well as
Mm.
how does routing work. So I'm just trying to understand behind the hood. Um, but not to the point where I can, I've memorized the syntax. I'm still
Right.
using the agent to like do that. Um, but I want to be sort of more accountable for my code and not just, create a sloppy code in the background.
Sure.
And as well as like understanding the file structure in that sense. But yeah,
Yep.
I think one of those questions was like how, at what range of the spectrum are you expected? Like, can you call yourself a design engineer and not a like a product designer? Because I think next
Yeah.
6 months everyone would be expected to do that, and that bar is also shifting from maybe middle to the that part. Um,
Yep.
but maybe what I'm doing in this direction, does that sort of align? Or because one of the other things you
Yeah.
mentioned is how does the whole system work, how does the authentication work, the backend, how it connects. um, is that going to be an expectation for a designer, or it's more on the front end side?
Yeah.
Just curious to like, if there was like a roadmap or pathway to get there,
Sure.
what would those steps look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to also like talk about companies and company structure because like a lot of this stuff is shifting too, right? Like we've met with startups who don't even have an engineering team, right? Like they literally just have a design engineer team
Oh,
and they handle everything, right? Like that exists. But then I think there's more mature, I would say, I don't want to say mature because it's like wrong context. Maturity can be like relative to like a variety of things, right? But I'd say like companies maybe in an older way of working, right? Where
yeah.
they're trying to like slot in this new way of working and say, well, we have an engineering team, we have a design team, and now these two groups need to work together. And I think Andy was talking about this before, like his team is set up that way where it's like design team does design work and they do some vibe coding work, but it's sandboxed and like our development team must review everything the design team does before anything gets pushed, right? And then there's other groups that are like somewhere in between that, where it's like the design team is not allowed inside of the GitHub at all. But they maybe have like taken what's already been built and they like recreated in their own sandboxed environment. And then like they're not pushing like PRs or anything like that. They're just kind of operating inside of this small little silo. But because everything they have there is like basically mirroring what's live, um, they kind of like do experiments and then explain it to the dev team, and then the dev team takes that and says, okay, got it, I'm going to like take, I'm not going to use your code, but I'm going to like go
Yeah.
build with our code what you did here, right? So it's like a little bit more experimental approach, a little definitely more sandboxed approach, and but still works. Like every company will define how they do it. um, and I'd say like those are probably like the three definitions of like how I'd think about this. In terms of like, at what stage you start to like thinking about like, well, where am I in all of this? And what do I even call myself, right? Because like I said, the terms are so amorphous at this stage and every company is defining them differently. At Google DeepMind, they call them AI product designers. They have a different definition for a design engineer. At other companies, they'll call them design engineers. Some companies will call them vibe coders. Some call them product engineers. Some call them product design engineers, like I mentioned. Um, these are all terms that like I would really be keeping a pulse on in the market to just understand like how are people calling them, and whatever they do call them, make sure you include those in your LinkedIn portfolio and all the other places it needs to be, because those keywords will be things that recruiters and hiring managers are searching for. And then in terms of like the level of proficiency, like you were saying, it's like I'll be honest, like I know what those things are, right? And I don't even know the proper syntax for them all the time. Like sometimes I kind of do, but like most of the time I don't, and frankly don't care, don't need it, not important.
Okay.
The important thing is to kind of just understand how they work, and a lot of times that information can be just found in the API documentation. So like you mentioned, I think some animation libraries, maybe like Framer Motion was one of them. So like
GSAP
Framer
and Motion.
Motion, very
Mhm.
popular, library used for React animations. They have a very extensive API, and if you are interested in learning what it's capable of, go to Framer Motion, learn like from reading the API, or even like copy and paste the page into Claude or whatever you use, and be like, what can this thing do? And
Yeah.
then you'll learn all the capabilities. And then you'll learn how to also speak the language of that particular framework. And then you can instruct Claude Code or whatever tool you use to say, hey, I want to use Framer Motion. It's like, great, I'll install that thing right away. And then this is what I want to do with it, right? And explain exactly in their terms, in their vocabulary, what you want to do. And like, then it becomes more of a prompt engineering problem instead of like
Yeah.
a use sref, whatever, like, or,
Mm.
I don't know, not sref, but you get the idea. I don't even know the syntax for these things anymore. So I think that is the level. The importance of the proficiency is like being
Yeah.
able to read and understand API documentation, and not like the nuance of like how the code is written or like even the mechanics, like you were describing, of the code.
Got it. Yeah, sounds good. That was very helpful.
Yeah,
I have more questions regarding portfolio, but I'm happy to jump back if you have
I
time.
think it's a good one. Why don't you ask it and then I'll jump to James.
Yeah. The other thing was I've been seeing a lot of these playground style portfolios, which are,
Yeah,
vibe coded in Claude Code or Cursor,
sure,
as opposed to like a traditional Framer template that you use and edit.
sure.
Um, what's your take on those? Because I've been seeing them a lot. It's a bit harder for, as a person to like showcase their actual design work in those.
Hmm.
But I think they give an instant like signal that, this person has been using tools and vibe coding.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just curious to see what has worked with other candidates and how are, hiring managers seeing
Yeah,
those.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, I think only exclusively putting this playground style work is probably not as effective as people would think, right? I think it needs to be a combination of both. You know, we need to see both your work product, see the case studies, all that kind of stuff. All that is still important. We want to know about you and your background and your history, right? And we also want to see evidence that you are vibe coding and experimenting and using these new tools, right? So I would say it's not just one, it is all of those things. That being said, if there is no evidence of any vibe coding stuff going on here, like that is for most companies who are hiring for that type of role an instant no, you know, and it, you know, to us it's just not enough signal. We can't trust that you can't just say that I'm a vibe coder or design engineer. You need to prove it, and so we need to see that type of work in there. So yeah, I would highly encourage you to, you know, include it. We love seeing vibe coded projects, whatever side projects you're working on, anything you've done at your companies would be great too. It can be anything at any level of complexity too, right? Like we just want to see that you're actually doing it, right? And the more interactive it is, the better, right? So we want to see interactive prototypes. We want to see, if you can, like showing video previews. Like, you know, I use a tool. I think they just released like a open source kind of version of this too, called Screen Studio. It does a great job
Oh yeah.
of capturing,
Yep.
you know, screens and like showing, you know, visually like how interactions might work. So like, you know, animating those things, bringing them to life, I think is just a great way to demonstrate your ability. And those are definitely the signals that like we look for, and some of the biggest and best companies in the world will look for when it comes to your portfolio.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Cool. Thank you, Mayank. I appreciate
Thank you.
your time and
Yeah.
question. James, I'm going to come to you now.
How do I drop off? Sorry.
I think there. If you can't figure it out, I will. I will kick you out of
just
here.
look at
Thank
Sorry.
you.
Let's see. Just a 1 second, James.
No worries.
There we go. All right. See you later, Mayank. Thank you.
See you.
Cool. Hey, James. How are you?
I'm good, Adam. Yeah, I just wanted to chat with you about the current state of the like hiring market. I've got like loads of war stories. I've been, you know, interviewing with loads of people. And I think, you know, shout out to all the designers here who are interviewing at the moment. I know it's like not the easiest market, lots of layoffs, and yeah, also like some pushback against the builder designer. Like I've been interviewing at many levels. I'm like a staff, I guess, senior design. It doesn't really matter what the term is. Like I've been done my reps and done a lot of vibe coding. My GitHub is like insane. Like commits are off the charts. Today I'm proud because I just sent in for review a Chrome extension for a product I've been working on, which I'm really, you know, so
Congrats.
excited about. And like been building like whole agentic workflows, like self-learning, you know, extraction, evals, everything. One of the weird things that I noticed was, sorry, Adam, if I'm going into a bit of a monologue, but we'll get to some questions. But I have noticed that when I get to like later rounds, people are way more conservative than I expected in even companies saying they want vibe coding. Actually, I found that they really just want more conservative. They want to see your Figma wireframes that every state's beautifully in the artboards. They push back against like being some crazy builder type. They're like, I've even had CTO turn around of like, stay in your lane. I'm not hiring an engineer. I'm hiring a designer. So it's kind of important to find out what they're hiring for, or at least try to clarify it during the process, because sometimes it's not initially clear. And yeah, and then that will influence how hard you lean into the builder like archetype.
Yeah.
So I've definitely suffered from that, I think. And then I've often like been in final rounds and had people excited, and then it's like, let's fall back on the Fang steady hands person rather than my own background. I don't have the Fang experience.
Right.
So I guess my question to Adam is more, yeah, like what are you hearing from in the companies that are looking for, designers? And I guess, craft is like the thing that I just want to improve personally, and just I need to go back and like I have workflows where I can go from both ways, design system, code to design system and back, and Storybook have components in there, but um yeah, what's your take on the kind of building versus kind of traditional craft, and what your clients are looking for?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. You're spot on. And I'll say that, we were speaking to, let's say, we've been speaking to designers from and hiring managers from two of the largest, most well-known companies in the world. And one of them extremely progressive in the way that they're operating. The other one wants to be progressive and even told us that they want to hire folks that are like this. Um, Yet when it came down to the interview process, they were asking to see their Figma files. And it was like, you realize that these folks are working like 80 to 90% of their time now inside of like Claude Code or whatever tool that they use, instructing what they want to build. And then, and those like fine points, like, using Figma or whatever to help refine certain things, right? Like important, maybe complex things, or things that require a lot of hand, holding on the design side. Um, and so it was pretty extraordinary to me to hear that, given what they're asking for. You know what I mean? And so I think that you're going to find this pretty wide spectrum at this moment with companies operating this kind of nebulous territory of like, what are we, and what do we want to be, and how do we want to operate moving forward? Because there is so much changing under our feet
Mhm.
now. So my answer to your question is two-part. One is, I think, today, the answer today, and then the other part is the answer like a year from now. and and so the answer for today is adaptability, right? I think we've all had long careers doing it the old way. We likely do have Figma files with lots of, things that are organized in the way that they might expect to see them. We likely have deep case studies organized in the way that people would expect to see them. And you can showcase that work and demonstrate that, hey, yes, I am very capable of working in this way and happy to do so. And I do love doing those other things, but I'm not married to them. But if you're interested, I would be happy to help guide the team and train folks on how to go this direction,
Mhm.
right? That's good framing. It keeps you, it keeps you look like you have an open mind, but also very knowledgeable, confident, and like bring so much more to the table than just being a staff level IC.
Mhm.
But I think my answer to this a year from now is, gosh, if you're a company that has not started to adopt this new way of working, like, what are you even doing? Like, you are so far behind, right? So, um, I think much like the transition we saw many years ago from like, even from like Photoshop to Sketch and then Sketch to Figma, right? Which you're probably old enough like me to, to remember. Maybe not everybody in this chat, but there was like a major like reframe of like the way that we needed to approach designing, and over time companies finally got it and everyone was on Figma, right?
Mhm.
I think that same thing's happening now. And look, you're in a great spot. But I'd say like if you are interviewing for roles today, just trying to keep that open mind, showing that adaptability, having those examples ready of like kind of the old way of doing things, and also making a decision for yourself as you go through the process and asking the right questions of the hiring managers and the team to understand where are they at on that maturity scale when it comes to applying, I guess you could call it, AI design or,
Yeah. I mean,
design
I've been
engineering,
surprised.
whatever.
I have been surprised by how conservative they are, but then I think, that makes sense. It's kind of the density of like design team and not wanting to rock the boat and kind of like falling
Yeah.
back on what they know. I can get it, but I've worked with crazy teams where it's just like, you know, like I was working for Kilo Code briefly, and they just like
Hmm.
work at insane speed. Or,
Right.
um, and then now I'm like working. I'm kind of in an incubator program with some VCs, and everyone's like a crazy person building stuff. So yeah, it's like a very different culture, I think, depending on who you're talking to. But yeah,
Yep.
as far as just tips to other designers, what I found working well is definitely like a kind of what I call a postage stamp with the kind of like I just have links with on Hover State showing little clips like you mentioned, Adam, of like having little video clips of work you've done. And that's kind of like the teaser. And then I share like a Figma file with case studies, and then having those teasers as well in the Figma file, because people just they want the TLDR to, like, if you get that, you just basically want to get past hiring manager and into like the interview rounds, and then you can go into like, the full, what we had, the case studies of like the 10-15 pages. You save that for
Yep.
the later stages, but you just want to somehow get through the initial screening. And unfortunately, in this like attention economy, it is like video focused in a way. So I
Yep.
would recommend to go for that. That's worked for
Yep.
me. But yeah, everyone, you got to work with your own skills and output and personality to see what works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And those like little video previews and like, kind of demonstrating how interactions work really work well. Like you have to include them. Some of our clients literally won't even talk to you if you don't have those kind of things showcased. So I think that's great advice, James. And yeah, like I think also one thing to note for someone like you, James, like very experienced, you already have the pedigree and credentials, like I'd say if you are a more junior designer, it might be helpful to include more detailed case studies on your website. If you are more senior, you can maybe get away with a little bit more about your background and experience and like company logo trains, and then maybe a few previews of like the type of projects you've worked on that are password protected, or like they're not necessarily like password protected. It's like, hey, request, full case study button, and then it kind of like will get them to engage with you, and hopefully you can get on a first round interview with them. But for more junior folks, might be a good idea to try to include a little bit more detail. But yeah, like also breadth of projects, right? It's like you have this amazing opportunity right now to like just build things you want, so it's like if you had an idea for something, like just go try to make it and document that process and showcase it on your portfolio. People want to see this experimentation. We're literally hiring people that would have never gotten jobs at the companies that we are hiring for. Like I'll give an example. Of a candidate. I won't mention the company name, but let's just say it's a person who worked at a company that was doing like mortgages, right? Like, and like not a sexy company. And then this person was literally getting an interview at a FANG company because this person was putting lots of work out on Twitter where he was vibe coding these really cool projects. It was like 100 days of like vibe coding projects, and like each day he would put out this really cool project and showcase it with the world, and he got noticed, right? And this person would have never made it past even like the first recruiters like doors, right? Like never would even made it because their pedigree was not great compared to what they were competing against, right? But they got noticed and they got into the interview process. I don't know if they ended up landing the job, but either way, that's like the environment we're in. So making sure that you do lots of things to stand out and showcase your work and showcase how you're utilizing these new tools, critically important. But to your point, David or James, sorry, I think that adaptability is important, and being able to read the room and like ask pointed questions about their work process today. How are they utilizing vibe coding, in their actual design workflow today will give you a real clear sense of like where they're at and like really help you determine, are you actually the right designer for them? And I know opportunities are limited these days, and so you sometimes can't be so selective. But I do think that that will be a telling sign and will help you kind of navigate it a little bit better.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, James. Great. Well, guys, I know we're coming up on time here. Is there any quick questions that anybody has that they want to pop into the chat? If not, I can kind of wrap things up. All right, it looks like we are good to go on this part. I'm hoping this was super helpful to everybody. I really want to thank you all for coming and joining us today. If you have not already, highly recommend joining our community, B150.ai. I'll put that right here on the screen for you guys. I'll show that in the chat. Let's see, does this show in stream? There it goes. So it's a totally free community. It's kind of like a LinkedIn for AI professionals. It's a great place to ask questions like these and learn from others. I also vibe coded a product called Walkie, which I also plug in here that I think you guys will also really enjoy. It also has a very generous free tier and also a completely free mode that is 100% local AI transcriptions. So let me just put this on the screen as well. Walkie.b150.ai. Yeah, it's an AI transcription tool just like Whisperflow. It's got a lot of other cool features too. Like we have an agent mode as well. Literally, it is as good as any of the tools that are out there. So I really recommend it. And if you're paying for Whisperflow right now, we literally offer it for half the price. So definitely check that out. I'm building every day, like literally building new tools every day. I'm right now working on a granola competitor. I'm working on a competitor to like Beehive and Ghost. That's going to be like an agentic approach to SEO, AEO, and GEO. I have so many ideas. I'm just like bursting at the seams. I can't even decide like which ones to focus on. I built literally an operating system called Transistor OS that I've been kind of working on. It's an answer to OpenClaw's horrendous UI, and user experience. So I really love doing this work. I want to see what you guys are building too. I'm so excited about the future of design and everything that is really ahead of us. I've said this once and I'll say it again. Designers are in the absolute best position to win in this new environment. If there are going to be layoffs, why would you let go of the design team who is so fundamentally important to the creation of an amazing user experience, can code it nearly all themselves now, test it with actual users, and deliver an amazing product? Like, just feels ripe for disruption. And frankly, I feel really good about the position that we're all in. So keep building. If you have more questions, pop them into the LinkedIn comment section, there's a live feed for this there. And thanks again for joining today. I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.